It appears that Israel is setting the stage for a long-feared ground offensive into Rafah. The Israeli military dropped leaflets urging people in parts of eastern Rafah to evacuate immediately. The IDF calls it a limited-scope operation. The defense minister earlier told troops to expect intense action in Rafah. Now, many Palestinians are already fleeing the area. The southern Gaza city was supposed to be a safe place where more than 1 million Palestinians have taken refuge there after fleeing from other areas. The UN says the area where people have been directed to go is simply not suitable to live. CNN's Arlette Saenz is at the White House, but let's begin with Nick Robertson, who's following all the developments from London now. Nick, this Rafah operation was long anticipated. What are you hearing about what Israel is planning to say, and if this indeed is the ground offensive that Israel has been warning about?
It has all the hallmarks of a ground offensive, and typically when Israel has launched previous ground offensives going into Gaza not long after those horrific October 7th attacks, it took many days before we began to get an idea of the scope and scale of the operation. It was a big operation, but Israel was sort of able to keep it pretty much under wraps, remembering journalists like ourselves and other news organizations are not allowed by Israel to go into Gaza to freely report and see what's happening. So there's a level of difficulty to understand precisely what's happening in and around Rafah at the moment. But what is clear, these leaflets that the IDF are dropping are very similar to leaflets they've dropped at the heads prior to other major military operations. They've told Palestinians in about 12 different blocks of housing, that's about 100,000 people, the UN estimates, to leave their houses and go to an expanded, safer area. And these leaflets, these flyers that the IDF are dropping, tell the residents there that their area is going to be used as is going to be where an offensive is against terrorists. And it says that those terrorists are going to hide among you. It's very clear that when the IDF goes in there, the scenarios could be, it appears, like previous military operations where civilians get caught up in the operations. Now, has the military operation actually begun? It doesn't appear so, but again, we're restricted in what we can see and what we can actually get access to report. So we know that the negotiations at the moment are sort of stalled. They're not completely broken down. So is this a last-ditch pressure effort by Israel on Hamas to cede to their terms? The gap still remains very big at those talks. So what the UN is describing now in and around the area of Rafah, where people are being told to go to these areas where there isn't enough food, isn't enough water, isn't enough sanitation, not the right conditions for them to go and live. And as we've seen in other operations, they won't necessarily be safe in these designated humanitarian safer areas. So the UN's very concerned, not just about their welfare, physical, but psychological welfare, and that this could precipitate panic, which could mean in an area where there are about 1.5 million people living, that could be a pretty dire consequences. And UNICEF is saying about 600,000 children there face a very uncertain time at this moment.
Nick Robertson, thank you. Let's head over to the White House now and Arlette Saenz. What's the view from there and what the Biden administration is saying about all this, considering ceasefire talks are ongoing, where the CIA director, Bill Burns, is in Doha right now trying to broker a deal? Netanyahu has said over and over again that deal or no deal, this ground incursion will go forward.
Yeah, Amra, there's no question that the White House is watching these latest moves from Israel relating to eastern Rafah incredibly closely. It comes as the administration for months now has warned about a potential ground operation in Rafah, with President Biden and others here at the White House stressing to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that they need to ensure there is a plan in place to ensure the safety and evacuation of the more than 1.4 million Palestinians who are in the Rafah area at this time. Now, on Friday, we had reported that U.S. and Israeli officials had been in conversations about Rafah, that Israel provided insight into their thinking relating to the evacuation of Rafah, but sources cautioned that what was presented did not appear to be a final plan, that there was no full briefing when it comes to what a military operation would look like. But the White House certainly has been watching this with quite a bit of concern, as President Biden's also facing domestic pressure here at home relating to the way that Israel has conducted its campaign in Gaza. Now, over the weekend, we also learned that the U.S. paused a shipment of U.S.-made ammunition to Israel. A source familiar with the matter told us that this was not due to this potential operation into Rafah, and that this would not impact aid going forward. So big questions about why exactly there was that pause in shipment. Senator Chris Coons, a key member of the Foreign Relations Committee, suggested it could have been logistical issues. But this is all playing out, as Nick noted, against the backdrop of those hostage and ceasefire negotiations that appear to have stalled out over the weekend. CIA Director Bill Burns was on hand in Cairo, working as a mediator on this issue. He then traveled on to Doha, where he met with the Qatari Prime Minister. He was set to travel to Israel today, but is actually remaining in Doha, as the administration all last week had really been speaking in quite optimistic tones about the prospect of a deal coming together. But we saw the Israeli and Hamas sides both really blame each other for what they viewed as each other's extreme views. So this is something that the White House certainly wants to try to get an agreement on, but at the time it appears that those conversations are stalled out. Doesn't mean that they won't get on track at some point. But also, I would note that today President Biden here at the White House will be having lunch with Jordan's King Abdullah. Abdullah, of course, is a key player in the region. He has warned and expressed concerns about the way that this operation has been conducted in Gaza, about the humanitarian issues that are on hand there. So the president might have a chance to hear directly from King Abdullah about his concerns. But all of this comes as you have big questions about what Israel will be doing going forward when it relates to Rafah, as the U.S. has been trying to stress that they need to take great care to ensure the safety of civilians there.
Yeah, so much uncertainty when it comes to the fate of the civilians. Arlette Saenz at the White House, thank you very much. Now, earlier, our Max Foster spoke to Scott Anderson, the director of UNRWA Affairs in Gaza. UNRWA is a UN agency that works to support Palestinian refugees. He is currently in Gaza, and he says people need a place to escape the fighting.
Our concerns of 1.4 million people that have sought refuge from the violence in Rafah. People need to be given an opportunity to move away from conflict. If they aren't, I mean, the results would be catastrophic. The impact would be catastrophic to have a fight in such a densely populated neighborhoods that exist throughout Rafah. Where I sit in Tel Sultan, which is one of the neighborhoods further to the west, it's incredibly densely populated. You see tents and makeshift plastic structures everywhere. If an operation happened here at any scale, it's hard to predict the scale of death other than to say it would be catastrophic, and the impact would be catastrophic for people who sought safety here.
The Americans have obviously warned against civilian casualties. They've given that warning to Israel. How much support are you getting from countries other than Israel in your work to making sure civilians are looked after?
I think this is certainly a concern for everybody, I think including Israel, that innocent civilians are not harmed in this conflict. We've heard very loudly from the United States, as you mentioned, but also many countries within the European Union, as well as the Gulf states. So anybody that's a donor here or is active here has the same concern as the United Nations, and that is we want innocent civilians to be kept safe. We want children to be kept safe, and we continue to call on all parties to the conflict to ensure that civilians are safe and not impacted by ongoing hostilities.